Hey, and welcome back. I'm Jonathan McHugh, the Q and Q Score. And today we're lucky enough to have Mark Frazier, the founder of the Sync Summit Series. Mark is an experienced executive in music entertainment technology. He's launched the official US Ringtone Chart with Billboard Magazine back in the day. As a published journalist, an expert on music and tech, Mark has been quoted extensively in leading business and consumer publications like The Wall Street Journal, CNN, Forbes, and USA Today. This big shot is a frequent speaker at conferences and conventions on interactive entertainment, content, and technologies. Ladies and gentlemen, Mark Frazier. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing all right.
Welcome aboard. Welcome to the Q Score.
Happy to be here.
Mark is a New Yorker.
Yes.
But he's visiting us on the West Coast, so we roped him in to come and do a little Q Score.
Yep.
You don't have any events out here while you're here. You're just kind of setting up for the big one in September. So
exactly.
Tell us about the Sync series and how you started putting this all together.
Okay. Well, basically, I would say it started about a year and a half ago. I wanted to create an event in the that would go around, that would cover issues that are creative issues, promotional issues, and issues of process in sync. And to do it in a way that was a little bit different than the events that I had been going to or speaking at, which I found would not really get to the heart of what the issues were and the heart of what's important, which I think is the creative. So it was basically, well, let's create an event that I would want to attend. That's how I started with it. Mm-hmm. And the first one that we did in New York, we expected maybe 60 to 100 people to come. It ended up having 200 people. The one that we did in LA last December, extremely well received. We're very fortunate about that. We had about 300 people at that one. And then we did one in Paris in April. And the idea of doing a Paris one was to get people in the European market to come together the same way that we've done here. And really, at the end of the day, the goal with all of these events that we're doing is to bring together the people who are on the visual creative and the people on the musical creative and have them talk about how they do their jobs, how they do their business. And really, start by focusing on the creative, then talking about process and promotion.
Sure. So let's talk about how the European market, for example, you grew up or you spent some time.
I went to school in Europe. Yeah.
In France. So
yeah.
Talk about how, first of all, what type of people did you have on that, and how does that market, the European market, differ from the American market when it comes to the film and TV sync world?
Okay. Those are two really good questions. And I think that, in terms of the people that speak and attend a European event, the difference is not really the types of people. It's the same types of people. People from music supervision or direction or producers, or people from labels, publishers, and artists. But the difference lies in the types of people. Here it will be much more American-centric in terms of the people that are speaking, whereas in Europe, we need to make it a European conference. It's extremely important to have the local music supervisors and the local publishers and labels properly represented to speak about issues that are unique to them. And of course, we have a large contingent of people that we bring over from the US because people want to meet them and do business with them. But the differences in the market are really a couple of things. One big difference is television. The television sync world really doesn't exist in the same way that it does here because there's blanket licensing in Europe. And basically, Can you
define blanket licensing a little bit for us?
Well, to the extent that I understand it in my, limited sense. But basically, with blanket licensing, there's a fee that's paid to the performance rights organization. Like, I'll give you an example, like Shazam in France. And it's a higher fee than it is here, than the performance rights associations get. But then the downside for the people that own the music is that basically they don't really have a say if, the Rolling Stones is used versus the Beatles versus some new artist.
Right. For example, I remember seeing Coldplay on a cooking show on the BBC.
Right.
Because the BBC has the European blanket, even though they're broadcasting here now, right, with BBC America. So, whereas that will never happen, will never happen, but could happen here, but has not happened yet. So it's very interesting how the paradigm is different. Mm-hmm. How do artists feel about that? They're in that box with every piece of library music almost. Like, what is that? Did that come up at all during the conference?
People if you ask them, my feeling is that you know, the artists that are really famous are just, you know, they're used to it in the marketplace. It's just the way it is. But, you know, if you were talking to some of the up-and-coming artists, I'm sure it would frustrate them a great deal. I mean, it frustrates everybody because you don't have a paycheck anymore coming from it in the same way, though on the other side you get a higher percentage sent to you. But not having that control, not having that ability to negotiate, at the end of the day, it didn't really come up as a topic at the conference, but I know it's a problem with people. Now, as far as it goes to the rest of the market, it's somewhat more similar to here. You know, film, advertising, video games, trailers, all of that, you know, warrants a bit of a negotiation, and, you know, the usual thing that people do here. It's pretty much similar.
Right. And talk about your background. How did you get to this place that you're in now?
Well, that's a really good question. Well, I mean, I've always been involved in music and tech, and I'll leave a lot of the details of, you know, when I became a writer in high school on music and stuff like that behind.
Yeah, we don't have that much time.
Yeah, exactly. We don't have that much time, so we'll just fast forward.
Yeah, exactly.
Basically, I would say it was in 1997, 98. I was involved in a couple of, you know, sort of pre-Napster music efforts, and I realized the extreme importance of licensing just as a general thing. You know, basically one company failed because they didn't do a good job in getting their licenses and they had a bad strategy. The other one succeeded and was bought by eMusic in 2000. So I got to see smart licensing versus bad. Fast forwarding to where we're at now, you know, I have worked on a lot of music and technology companies and worked with a lot of music tech organizations. And at the end of the day, the licensing market to me seemed to be something that was, you know, a fascinating market. I've been involved in it as a producer of commercials. I've also worked with bands as a manager, so I understood both sides of the puzzle, and I thought this is really a market I want to dive into and work in. So that's really it. It was just looking at the marketplace and thinking to myself, you know, I like this area of the music business, and it's just a place that I'd, you know, like to make a business home in.
Mm-hmm. And so tell us, you have an event coming up in June this week, next week I believe, right?
Next week in New York.
Yeah, tell us about that one.
Okay. Well, what we're doing is we have an event that is called Sync Sessions, and we're doing these one-day events where basically we'll have a few panels, a couple of keynotes. One of the keynotes is Jim Black from Clear Songs.
Great.
And he's an awesome guy. Mm-hmm. We're going to have fun with that. And basically these events are not really of the same scale as what we're doing in Los Angeles, which is a 2-day event with lots of tracks and a sync competition and things that we can talk about. But, you know, this is an event that's a more concentrated event for about 200 people. A lot of emphasis is placed on networking and interaction, and being able to, you know, not just make connections with the other audience members, but be able to, in a casual way, make connections with the people who are on the stage. And then we're going to have a showcase after that until probably about 1 a.m.
So how do you curate the bands to play your showcase?
You know, it's a combination of things, but basically, you know, it's like me and a few other people who think we have good ears. I mean, whether we do or not is up to debate. But, you know, me and a few people that I know will get a lot of requests for bands, and we'll listen to the music, and, you know, if it's a majority vote, we'll get back to them and say, you know, we'd like you to do this. These are the next steps of doing a showcase. So we try to keep a bar of quality. We're not just going to let anybody play.
That's important. And then tell us, what's the date of the event in September, and tell us who's on that one.
Okay, yeah, the September 8th and 9th event has got some really great people on it. I mean, I would say, you know, other than yourself, you're there, so we've started off on a good foot. But we also have Randy Spenlove from Paramount, who's heading up music there.
He'll be on the show in a few weeks.
Cool, and he's fantastic guy. He's going to do a great job there. We're going to have Josh Rabinowitz and Mark Huffman from Gray and Procter & Gamble, respectively, are going to do a little bit of a tete-a-tete with me to talk about, you know, how the brand looks at the music and how the agency executes what they want. And that's going to be an interesting conversation. We've got Steve Schnurr coming in from EA. Mm-hmm. We've got a couple of people that I'm very close to closing, but we haven't closed them yet. So
let's go back to the brand advertising thing.
Yeah.
It's always a very unique thing about trying to find the strategy about, okay, well, we can pick a song for a TV commercial, but is there any more effective way to utilize that artist in promoting the brand without a sponsorship? What are you seeing more and more as these, brand deals get bigger and bigger and the artists get more interested because they need that massive TV exposure for the music that can break an artist? Are you seeing more of that coming up?
We've seen a lot of deals. I mean, it's like hear and see about the top end deals, right? Where you've got like, Jay-Z's done his latest thing where somebody's paying him a few $1 million to talk about
deals,
something.
right?
Yeah.
Which is
it's a huge
positive
deal.
and negative because he gets bullets for when it doesn't quite work well.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
So, what's one that you could think of that's maybe been really good for both the brand and the artist? Or any stories?
Yeah, actually, the one that comes to mind is the one that Tim Riley over at Activision did with Eminem and Interscope. I thought that was a pretty good one. They launched Call of Duty. I think it was Call of Duty 2. Mm-hmm. Call of Duty 2 was launched with an Eminem song as the official song.
Powerful.
And
super powerful.
It was a nice paycheck for the artist, of course, but more importantly, there was a huge marketing campaign behind this that no record label could afford to do. $1 billion worth of sales on the first day for the game. Massive. And getting an artist involved in that on the base level is just a huge win. I mean, I personally feel like this is the future of how artists are going to get broken as we go on. It's I mean, we're talking about the real top level deals right now, but there are lots of smaller deals that happen for artists every day who are getting involved with brands. I mean, just yesterday, I was over at Shazam, and they had an artist called Magic out of Toronto. They did a little showcase. They talked a little bit about themselves, but they actually really came out of nowhere and then were the #1 artist on Shazam, just based on a lot of people having sort of a groundswell.
Oh, I saw that band. I saw that band play at the thing in the Napa show.
Yeah.
The Valley show. Yeah, so that's interesting. So and Shazam, what kind of stuff are they doing as far as pulling in with music and brands?
Well, I mean, what I think is really cool about them, and I've always had sort of a real...
You're a geek. You're a tech geek.
Yeah, exactly. So I've always liked Shazam. And
right.
I know Shazam from like 2003 when I first used it. And I went to all of my friends. I'm like, this is the coolest thing. If you don't know what a song is, just put in this text code.
That's amazing.
And they've evolved it into something which is not just, doing a text code or maybe getting a ringtone, but it actually evolved into something that has become a sort of a point of sale after the call to action, which is happening more and more with artists in advertising and happening with artists in TV. And Shazam has really been at the forefront of that, where you can Shazam it immediately, and then you'll start to get all of this artist content. And some of it will be promotional, some of it will be like upselling. It's whatever people want to do. It just basically activates the app to do certain things.
Right.
And what's really cool about this is that you can look at a usage of music, whether it's original or licensed. In this case, it's somewhat immaterial for this example, but you can look at a usage of a particular song, and then you'll see what happens over like a one-day arc in terms of what everybody did when they Shazammed it. And that, to me, is an enormously important way in this world to build audience.
Yeah, I noticed when I was in Napa, the radio stations are actually, the radio promo people are using it to show radio stations what's happening in their marketplace.
Yeah.
How many people are Shazamming their songs, and they're using that as a credibility booster to make the radio stations play it more.
Yeah.
So it's really fantastic what's going on out there.
It's amazing, and I'll tell you something. When I look at what they do now, it's basically the new chart, as far as I see it. I mean, I don't want to put Billboard down.
Are they doing Shazam charts yet?
But they're doing Shazam charts.
They are.
And I think that the Shazam charts are a bellwether for what you're going to see in Billboard a few weeks later.
Right.
A lot of the
So
time.
just go back to that for a second, because you were there early on the Ringtone chart, right?
Yeah.
And that was like Billboard hadn't added any charts in quite some time.
Yeah.
So tell us about that germination.
Okay, I'll give you a very brief thing on that. I mean, we had a company that was in mobile music, and we did market research. We did custom reports for people. It was basically a consulting company. And one of the things that I always wanted to do was quantify the ringtone business once it started to grow. And a lot of people would bandy about, we've got this much money in it, this many figures, et cetera. And I'm like, that's all great, but I want empirical data. And it was a bit of an uphill climb for me without the right partner. So I was at a conference. I met John Kilcullen, wonderful guy who was the publisher of Billboard at the time. He and I had a chat, and we were like, let's make a chart. So we made a chart.
Simple.
Yeah, we made a chart. They published it. we went out together and we solidified the deals. Like we did the deals through our company. We did the software in the background that would collect all the data,
to get the data,
and make sure it was purified.
Right. And that's always a key thing, is how do you make sure that data is pure and not, oh yeah, well I want to promote this guy, so let me pump him up the chart.
Right.
What was your mechanism for doing that?
Well, I mean, the mechanism, to be honest, was not a technical mechanism. It was like somebody who was dedicated working with me, making sure that we were getting clean data.
Right.
And that was basically, you know, I mean, the threat to people that, you know, we would cut them off if they gave us false data is just not good enough. You know, you needed to have, you know, it's like, how do you know? So I needed to have somebody who was there verifying every single week. That's how we did it.
Right.
I mean,
and what year was that the chart started?
We started the charts in 2004. And
then ringtones kind of to go down. How long did it go before it just kind of went like this?
You know, it's so funny. I always thought of it as like the pet rock of, you know, our time, because I knew when I started following the ringtone business that it was going to go like this, because eventually technology was going to make it free or irrelevant, and it did. But it went to, in the U.S., I think it was about a $3 to $4 billion market worldwide, and in the U.S., I think like at the top, it was probably around 600, 700 million, and then from there,
fell off the train.
And that's basically, it coincided with the iPhone coming out, because I think that once the iPhone came out and you started to get applications, people would much rather spend their money and time on an app that you can do things with than a stupid ringtone.
Right, it's great.
Yeah.
Well, Mark Frazier, Sync Summit, look for him, event in New York coming up next week, and then look for it, Sync Summit, look it up online, and come out and support, and you'll meet a lot of tremendous music supervisors and get a lot of information. So we'll see you next time. Thanks for coming. For more Q-Score, please check us out at emPOWERme.tv to find out what goes on behind the curtain and how the film and TV music gets made. It happens right here. Tune in.